Okay? To insert a pivot table now, please take note of this. I'm going to delete these two sheets. Please take proper note of this. To insert a pivot table, I can do it in about 2 to 3 ways. To insert a pivot table, I can do it in about 2 to 3 ways. It doesn't matter how you do it. What matters is that you insert a pivot table. So my data is currently clicked. Let me show you the first method. Now that my data is selected, I will click table design. And at the top here, you see what it writes here. Summarize with pivot table. Summarize with pivot table. If I click that, it asks me select table or range, new worksheet. I'm good with this. I will just click OK. This is a pivot table. Okay? Pivot table 1. So this is where I'll begin to build my report. But that is way number 1. I've taught you the first method. What did I say you would do? Click anywhere on your data and make sure your tab, table design, comes up. Click on table design and locate summarize with pivot table. Now, should in case you are unable to do that for one reason or another, let's look at another method. I can easily say, click anywhere on my table, and we come to the insert. Do you see that? The insert tab. And I will insert pivot table. Click on pivot table. He asks you for the same thing. I say okay. And you see now that it creates a pivot table for me. In a new worksheet. Okay? I'll go ahead and delete these two sheets that were just created. Now I will show you the third method. Now, I don't have to be on the sheet or where the data is to insert a pivot table. If I'm on a new sheet already, and I want to bring a pivot table into this sheet, a pivot table that is drawing or collecting its data from the employee table. How do I do that? I will come to Insert tab up here. I will click on Pivot Table. Now, it will ask me, select table or range. Now, what is the name of the table I created? What is the name of the table I created? The name of the table. Can you now see that you are really not paying attention? Table is different from sheet. I named the table employees. So those that are saying employee or employees, okay, it is actually employees. But I understand that probably you did not see the S. But those that are saying EMP, you are calling the sheet's name. which does not correlate with the table name. So I named my table employees. I hope you are seeing the difference now. That is the reason why I'm taking it this slow. So I'm going to type in here what I named my table. Employees. And I will click OK. You see that it automatically brings in the pivot table to this sheet. Isn't it? So we have seen 3 ways of inserting a pivot table. I can show you one more way. I can show you one more way. Let me see if it's valid. All right. Now, another way to insert a pivot table is if you already have a pivot table like this. You can simply copy, highlight that table, copy it, go to another place, and paste it. It will paste a new pivot table. Do you see that? It pasted a new pivot table. So that is 4 different methods that I just showed you on how to insert a pivot table. So now that we have seen how to insert pivot tables, let us now start working with pivot tables. What really are these pivot tables? What can they do? What are the features? Okay? What are the features? Yes, you can paste in a new sheet. Okay? Now, working with this pivot table. Whenever you click on a pivot table, look at some things that pop up. Number 1, you have a temporary ribbon tab or 2 ribbon tabs. So, you have pivot table analyze and you have design. You have pivot table analysis and you have design. So those are 2 temporary ribbon tabs that are created because you are working with pivot table now. Another thing that you need to see that is inserted is the pivot table fields. The pivot table fields. Okay? Now, for the pivot table fields, what do you notice about the pivot table fields? What do you notice here? What are these? I like students that interact with me. When I ask questions, you respond. So don't be surprised if a person asks a question, and because I know that that person is quite interactive, because I'm very familiar, I keep on seeing the name again and again. Okay? So try as much as possible to respond whenever I ask a question. So, what we can see on the pivot table fields are the column headers. the column headers. Okay? They represent each column in our table. Okay? They represent each column in our table. So the employee ID represents the employee ID column. The first name represents the first name column. The last name represents the last name column. The gender represents the gender column, and so on and so forth. So if I want to work with values on the gender column, I will use this. If I want to work with values on the salary column, I will use this. Do you get me? So those are three things that are created because you are working with a pivot table now. So take notes. Whenever you click outside your pivot table, you see that all those stuff disappears. The ribbon tabs at the top and the fields on the right, you see that it disappears because you have clicked outside your ribbon, your pivot table. Okay? So, if you want to get the tabs and now field back, all you have to do is do what? Click back in your pivot table. So what I'm explaining now is simply little things that students get into and, they begin to call their tutor, sir, I can't find my this thing again. You easily know that, oh, he has explained it in class. It's because I clicked outside my pivot table. Let me simply click my pivot table back. Now, if by mistake, while your pivot table is still selected, you mistakenly close this pivot field here. Let's say you close it like this. By mistake. Now, you see that your pivot table is still selected. You have your pivots, your tabs, ribbon tabs at the top. Pivot table, analyze, and design. You have them at the top, quite all right. But you don't have the fields on the right-hand side. What can you do to get those fields? Because that is what you'll be using to, generate the data you'll be analyzing. Very easily, go over to your pivot table analyze tab, click on it, and then click on field list. Field list. Bam, it comes up back. Okay? So I have shown you that. Now, whenever you make changes to your data, and you want the changes to reflect in your pivot table, simply click on your pivot table analyze ribbon tab and then click on refresh. So once you click on refresh, it will refresh the pivot table. So if there was any change that has been made to the data, it will automatically reflect in your pivot table. Now, for your pivot table fields, mine is showing like this. I know for some of you, or if not everyone, yours is most likely showing like this. Isn't it? You see that? So if you want it to show like mine, and the reason why I did that is it makes my dragging and dropping easy. Simply click on this setting icon at this corner here and change it to fields section and areas section side by side. And you have this. Okay? So, finally, you can also name your pivot table. Although you hardly need to, but should the case arise, when you click on your pivot table and you click on the ribbon tab, pivot table analyze, you come over to where you have pivot table name. You see that it is different from table name. This one is pivot table name. Okay? So you can rename your pivot table here. Let's say this pivot table is meant to show sales by or salary by department. I'll just say DEPT, that's department, underscore salary. Remember, I cannot put space in between the name. So I use underscore. And I'll press enter. Okay? So I've explained the concepts, the basics. Now, working with pivot tables. Pay attention. Pay attention. Pay attention. Okay? On your pivot table fields over here, you have filters, rows, columns, values. Now, I'm going to be explaining in depth each one of them because I really want everyone in this class to be carried along to understand every single thing about pivot table. I have about 105 students on the call. It would be my joy if every single one of you, because you understood this class in-depthly, you are able to tackle the Excel capstone project successfully and submit. Imagine having 100+ submission on the Excel capstone project. That would be beautiful. That is the reason why you see I am increasing my voice, emphasizing, shouting, everything, just to make sure you understand easily. Now, the filter allows you to filter your data. It works just like you have filters on your normal table. But because this is a pivot table, if you want to use filter, you can make use of this to filter. Okay? Now, for rows and columns, those are where your fields will be most likely. Take a look at how they appear. I can click and drag department to rows. Click and drag. And I will drop it on rows. When I do that, you see what happens. It gives me the distinct item in the department column. Not all the values, just the distinct item, meaning it can see human resources in the department column. It can see sales in the department column. It can see technology in the department column. What if I drag it to columns instead of rows? If I drag it to columns, what do you notice? It is still showing human resources, sales, and technology. But this time around, the layout has changed. That is basically the difference. The difference is in the layout. So if I have a question like, what is the sum of sales for the tech, or what is the sum of salary for the sales department? What do I do? Now, pay attention. I would put my department on the rows. Okay? Your categorical variable, categorical data on the rows. And what do I need? I want to sum the salary for each department. So I have department on rows already. The salary will now be dragged to values and drop it there. Once I drag salary to values, automatically it takes the sum of salary. It takes the what? Sum of salary. Take note of that. I'm already saying wow. And that is the reason why I said we teach those functions before we teach pivot tables. Because pivot table just make everything easy. But because I want you to also understand the functions. Okay, that's the reason why when I saw that people were saying, sir, you are too fast and all of that, I slowed down. Because I want you to get not only pivot table, but also get those functions that we made use of. You will now begin to see the correlation. It is looking like the pivot table is simply doing sum if. Isn't it? Sum if it is human resources, it gives you this value. Isn't it? Sum the salary if it is sales, it will give you this value. So you can see that it is very similar to the sum if function. Okay? So we know what we are doing here. If only you will be patient and follow diligently. You want to master this pivot table very well. That's the reason why I'm taking it slowly. You see the way I'm emphasizing and re-emphasizing. You see the way I'm explaining each thing one after the other. I am not rushing at all. There is no rushing when it comes to this. Don't worry, I'm here for you. Okay? Now, the salary is summing for each department. What if I don't want to sum the salary? I mean, look at this. Let me drag and carry it out from values. Okay? I have just department on rows. All right? Now, I don't want the sum of salary. What if I want the average for each department? Or I want to see the maximum salary in each department. How do I go about doing that? If I drag my salary to values, because it is a quantitative column, it automatically takes the sum of salary. any quantitative column automatically takes sum. So once I drop this here, it automatically takes what? Sum of salary. But if I don't want to take sum, please pay attention. How can you change the aggregate? If I give you a question, sum of salary for each department, you know how to make use of sum if. Okay, what if it's average salary for each department? You said that oh, there's another function, average if. Okay, what if it is maximum salary, highest salary for each department? You will find out that there is also max ifs. Do you see that? Okay, there is min if as well. But we don't want to be going, switching, using function here and there. With one pivot table, I can get the sum of the salary, the average salary, the minimum salary, the maximum salary. Okay? Now, one thing I can do here, since I have a pivot table for sum of salary by department, I can simply copy this. You can see I highlighted the entire pivot table. Control C. I will come down and paste it. Control V. That is another pivot table. Life is already hard. Let's not make it harder. So are you saying we shouldn't have taught those functions at all? You feel they are not germane, they are not necessary when this is here already? It is well. So I have my sum of salary. Right? If I want this sum of salary to be average of salary, what do I do? There are two ways I can do this. We're going to take this one. I'll show you the way, and we'll call it a day. I want us to go and dwell, ponder over what we've done so far. All the explanations. So pay attention. Currently, I'm having sum of salary. Let us change it to average or maximum. How do I do that? I can either come to where I have sum of salary on the values here. Click this. You can see this tiny box, tiny arrow here. Click it. And then click value field settings. Value field settings. Under your value field settings, do you see what you have there? Okay, we are still going to insert currency, don't worry. Now, under your value field settings, you can see what you have there. So if you want to take the average, all you need to do is say, okay, it is average I want to take. You can set the number format over here and set it to currency if that's what you want. And then click what? OK. Then come back here and click OK. And you can see automatically, while this one is giving you sum of salary, this one is giving you the average of the salary. So let us insert currency for this. Okay, highlight it and add the dollar symbol like this. Although it looks different, accounting, let's change it to currency. So sum of salary, average of salary. Let's do one more. Okay, for maximum salary. This, and I'll paste it here. Okay, so how there's a formula that has been put inside that pivot table that, okay, when they use average, it knows how to calculate the average. Okay, now we've done sum of salary, average of salary. Let's do one more. Let's do max. Okay. Now, initially, I showed you a method by coming here, clicking value field settings. If you don't want to come all the way back here, you can simply right-click this column header. You see where you have average of salary? Okay, or just this salary column like this. Right-click it. What did I say? Right-click. Then come to value field settings. Can you see that? See it here. Value field settings. Click on it. Now let us change that average to maximum. And then we'll say OK. So for each department, you can see the highest salary that a person is earning. Do you see that? Okay. So we can easily see the sum of salary, average of salary, the maximum salary. Okay. We'll still do a recap of pivot tables before we enter pivot charts in the next class, because I need to drill this thing into us properly. Okay. I'm going to be dropping the attendance link soon. All right. Now, one might wonder, I'm looking at departments by sum of salary, departments by average of salary, department by maximum salary again. Why don't I do it in one pivot table? Sir, is it possible? Yes, it is. Let's copy this pivot table and paste it here. Now, currently, I am looking at salary or sum of salary by department. Okay? I didn't want to show us this yet. So don't bother about that. Okay, it happened because I double clicked the figure. So if you double click any figure here, it will take you to the data for that department. Okay, so that's the reason why it opened a new sheet. These are the people in the sales department, and these are their salaries. Okay, so I didn't want to show that on the next class, but don't worry, we'll still look at that. Now, I want to do some average max on one pivot table. I already have department on the rows, sum of salary on the values. Do you know I can drag salary again and drop it on values? Another sum of salary, say sum of salary 2. I can do it again and drop it on values. Do it again, drop it on values. Now I have 4 columns. Do you see that? So 1 is sum of salary. I will come to the second column, right click, and click value field settings. Let us change this one to average. Okay. I will come to the third one. Right click, value field settings. I will change that one to max. I will do for this one as well. Right click, value field settings. I will change it to min. And I will say okay. And automatically, I can see the minimum, maximum, average, and the sum of salary for each department in our company. 4 questions answered at once without any use of function. It does not mean that the functions are useless. Okay? It doesn't mean the functions are useless. But you see how pivot table makes it easy. Right? So I'm going to be posting the link to the attendance now. Okay? I'm going to be posting the link to the attendance now. Question 8 needs to be revisited. It doesn't need to. Question 8 question is average salary for sales executive, not sales department. Okay? For sales executive. So, with this, we have come to an end of today's class. Okay? So get ready for more on pivot table and pivot charts in the next class. There are quite a lot of things that we are still going to look at. Next class is the 9th class. Then by our 10th class, we should start our tutor-led mini projects in Excel. Then you will have your capstone project that you have to submit in a week. So your assignment is from class to class. If I give you assignment today, you are expected to submit before the next class. But if I give you a project, you are expected to submit in a week. Okay? So, if you would be patient and diligent, you will enjoy the pivot table, pivot charts class. And if you now follow along and persevere, you will enjoy the Power BI class even more. All right, so I'm sending the Google Forms link now for the attendance. If we have any question, you haven't done any assignment, what can you do? Don't miss any other assignment given. Okay? So, attendance link has been posted. Please submit your attendance. If you have any question, you can raise your hand now. If you have any question, you can raise your hand. Victor, Mr. Victor, are you still in a class? Your question is still here. You can take them now. All right, Mr. Victor, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Okay, sir. Hello, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. I just want to ask a question with respect to that question 5. If I use a sorting, but adding filter to my heading and sum the salary of technology and using that formula, sum if, I got a different answer from it. Do I supposed to have a different answer? in that
Yes,
regard?
it's possible you have a different answer. Okay, it's possible you have a different answer because you already filtered the column.
Okay.
Okay, because you already filtered the column. But if you make use of the formula I made use of, you should have the same answer.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. Olumide, Abi? Okay, Abiodun Bakare.
Good evening, sir, and good evening, everyone.
Good evening,
Yes,
sir.
so my question is with respect to number 8. So while I was working on my assignment, I used average ifs. That's S in front of I. Okay, sorry, behind I. And I got the answer you got. Okay, so while we were doing the correction, I also used the average if, but it keeps coming back with an error. So I don't know what is going on there, sir. If you can help.
If you are using the average if, the what is it called? Average if, the argument is different from average ifs. Now, average ifs will collect the sum range first.
Yeah.
But average if will not collect the sum range first.
Okay.
You are putting a wrong range for the average if. That is the reason why you are having an error.
Okay, sir. My laptop is actually dead, so I switched to my tab. So once it comes on, I will copy the exact formula that I used, based on what you showed us, and paste it on the platform so you can help, check if it is the correct thing.
All right.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, sir.
You're welcome. So if you have questions, you can always post them on the platform, just like you said now, okay? Directing questions to my DM won't really be of help to you. Okay? So, or directing messages to my DM. Oyinlola, yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Malik.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay, so my issue is pasting the table one I created. I did not rename my pivot table. So I tried to paste it on a new sheet, but it was giving me value error. And I don't know. And then all of a sudden, when I tried to do it again, my table icon did not highlight. It just grayed out. So I can't even select it from the insert ribbon. So I don't know why.
So you cannot insert a table once it's already a table.
No, so
once
you said
you click your table,
we'll do
and
Control
you see
A.
table design. Do you see table design at the top?
After Control A, as if I want to create a table.
Click on your table. Just click on your table.
Okay.
Do you see table design at the top?
Yes.
Good. So once you see table design at the top, if you press Control A to insert pivot table.
Okay.
Control A, it highlights the entire table, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. Then if you go to insert and click on pivot table, it should insert a pivot table.
Will I click the arrow, the drop down, or just on pivot table?
Just click on pivot table.
Okay, yeah, it did. The table name is table 1. So it's asking me choose where you want your pivot table to be placed. New worksheet.
The new worksheet. Just click OK.
Okay. Yes, it created a pivot table. But you know what I'm saying? You taught us 4 different ways. The first one, that you're like, we'll go to a new sheet, do equals to, type the name of the table we created.
No, that is not a pivot table. The first one, I was only referencing the table I created. Now, I did not create a pivot table here.
Oh, okay. So the table I created first, I didn't rename it. It was just table 1. So I tried to now, make it populate on a new sheet, but it was giving me value error. So now it is not.
So why not rename it? Why not rename it and try it?
Okay, so now I try to do it again, but then my table icon is grayed out, so I can't even select it. So
why are you selecting your table icon? It is already a table. Just rename the table.
Okay, so how do I rename now?
You have the table design ribbon, isn't it?
Yes.
So click on the table design ribbon. Oh, that is where you will rename your table.
Name. Okay. Okay, I've renamed it. So I want to try to reference it and see if it will give me.
So once you go to a new sheet and you type equal to, and you start typing the table name, it should give you that table name. Yes.
I just did the same thing now. I selected it and it's still giving me value error.
How did you select it?
I double click.
Don't double click. Press the tab, your tab key. So undo what you did. Equal to, start typing the name. Once it brings it out, press your tab key once and press enter.
Value error, still the same thing.
Still the same value error?
Yes. Equals to employee.
Is it bringing out the table?
It's bringing out the table. It brought it out. Then tab and then enter. Value error. On a new sheet. So I don't know why.
What Excel version are you
using? The error message, the caution sign beside it says a value used in the formula is of the wrong data type.
What Excel version are you using?
I think it's Excel 2016.
Create a new sheet and try it again.
An entirely new sheet or?
Yeah, entirely new sheets.
Okay, I'll try it again and I'll drop it on the platform.
All right. Josiah Adewale.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Malik. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
I missed the beginning of this pivot table how we started, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to go through the recording and go through about it. So my question already is, I was asking earlier, can this pivot table solve all the problem, all the questions concerning the situation, or there are some that we have to still to rely on the functions?
Well, I don't know all the questions that are available in the world. That's one thing, okay? But what I know is that the pivot table is very powerful. All right. And basically everything I can think of, the pivot table should be able to address.
Okay. But it is no matter. I'm just curious anyway, because, for example, the last assignment that you treated, I had to go online again to sort for other means, especially the averages, before I could tackle the last question. So I'm just being curious, no real issue. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so I believe everyone has registered their attendance. All right. I believe everyone has registered their attendance. There's someone that said a battery is low. I might not be able to register attendance. Obieze, I hope you've registered your attendance now. Anthony Binidion. Can you unmute yourself? Best of His grace. Why are you unable to fill your attendance? What's the issue? Not giving ID yet. Why will you say not giving ID yet? I was the one that generated your ID. I dropped it on the WhatsApp platform, and I specifically tagged you to it. Mrs. Allison dropped it on the WhatsApp platform, and I specifically tagged you to it. So what this tells me is that you did not read the message on the platform. Despite our pleas, begging class after class that we should make sure that every message on the platform is being read. Okay, so let me confirm that I actually did that. All right, yes. Best of His grace. Yeah, I did. Okay. Your name is Grace Modupe Oluwa. Am I right? So if that's your name, yes, your ID was dropped on the WhatsApp group, and I tagged your name to that particular picture that contains your ID. Okay, so I advise you to do go as fast as possible, get your ID from the WhatsApp group, and fill the link. Okay. Adeni Folashade, why are you unable to fill the attendance? Anthony Pinedion, I'm with you. Your question, please.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much so far. My question is this. If, because at the time I was maybe network, I was cut off, but I don't know whether you address it. My question is, when you are given a data to work with, to clean, can you use pivot table directly, or you first of all clean using other this thing we have used, this thing we have learned in the past?
First of all, clean using the techniques that you've learned. You can't use pivot table to clean. You only use pivot. You said, I asked what is the use of pivot table before we started, and everyone said summarize data, summarize data, summarize data. Nobody mentioned cleaning. Okay, so you can't use pivot table to clean your data. You only use it to analyze by summarizing your data. Okay. All right. Bolu, I can see your hand is raised in the chat box. Which Bolo is this? Okay, so you can unmute yourself. All right, so Bolo, if you are speaking, we can't hear you. Bolo, if you are speaking, we can't hear you. All right, so do we have any other questions before we call it a class? I hope everyone on this in class right now has been able to fill their attendance. I hope everyone in class right now has been able to fill their attendance. You couldn't. I keep on asking you, why can't you? Adeni Folashade, why are you unable to fill the attendance? If you don't give me a reason, I cannot move on. We have to end the class and we have to end it quickly. You didn't see the form. Okay. I'm sending the link again. The form I sent about 30 times. I'm going to send it again. Have you seen the form now? Okay, so click the form and fill your attendance quickly. I'm surprised you said you didn't fill the form. You didn't see the form. This form has been sent about how many times? I sent it back to back.